Okay, namaste people. We are live and finally I'm with Abhijit Iyer-Mitra, the infamous, notorious Lockheed Martin lobbyist who is here to answer all your allegations and questions. So, Abhijit, how would you answer this question against you that you're not an engineer, you're not a technical person, then how dare you comment on HAL Tejas and defense issues?
Well, look, 99.99% people commenting on the economy aren't economists. The prime minister isn't an economist. Why is he running the economy? The finance minister isn't an economist. Why is she running the economy? I don't know. Most of these people asking questions, they're engineers.
Okay.
So, see, nowhere in the world do engineers run jack shit. In fact, the humanities has traditionally determined the course of science historically. Okay, they may have led to a crushing of science, but they've also led to a crushing of what do you call it? Of this thing. They've also led to the Industrial Revolution. So, first of all, humanities controls science. You may think it's science that leads; it does not. That you lead because we allow you to give you the impression that we lead. Remember, for all the big tech five, Facebook, Bezos, Facebook, Amazon, Twitter, and all of that, they are at the knees of people who run critical race theory. So understand, you may be an engineer, but I put you, you are the dog that I feed. Remember that.
But Abhijit, so we are here to take questions from the people and audience. Keep asking questions. This is supposed to be a question and answer session. So I have the first question out here by Mayank. Let me put it. Yeah. Abhijit, first question for you. Should India invest and be part of sixth generation fighter program such as Tempest or FCAS?
Dekho bhai, see, optimally, my answer would have been yes. Okay. Even the Korean fifth generation fighter program, I would have said yes. But ask yourself this: we got the NATCA technology and tried to make the Marut. Then we got the full technology for, and that time we got the engine technology also, mind you. Then we got the technology for the MiG-21. Then we got the technology for the Jaguar. Then we got the technology for the Sukhoi. You still weren't able to indigenize anything. See, you can't just keep doing the same thing over and over again. Clearly, something is wrong. Huh? And you
So
know,
you're
in this
saying
country,
that-
so so go check out that 2017 piece of news that 97% of Indian engineers can't problem solve. That isn't the problem. The problem is that 97%, like some of the question askers to Abhinav, think they're the balance 3%. So clearly, engineers can't be allowed. This is why the scientific bureaucracy has been such a disaster. And this is exactly why the ballistic missile and nuclear submarine program have been a success, because they've been run not by the scientific bureaucracy, but directly out of the PMO. Okay. So understand, there's an industrial mismatch. Sixth generation, you can buy a sixth generation fighter. The question is, can you internalize all the technologies out there? Do you have the depth, the MSME depth to absorb it? To what extent can you absorb it? I have friends that technology, some of it exists in India. It's extremely, niche. Pockets of it exist. These are all kids who have gone abroad and studied and come back and brought that technology with them. They're hibernating it at IIT as best as they can. The problem is not one of them. They keep getting given the run around by the military. And all of their first orders have come from America. Why is it that the American military is able to find people in India who have developed extraordinary products and taken them away?
Like?
I'm not going to get into the details because you know who I'm talking about as well. You've met 2 or 3 of them. So, what's the point? You have a scientific bureaucracy that's not economically trained, that doesn't know even how to be a bureaucracy in that sense. They're scientists who have come down to the level of the IAS. They essentially have IAS jobs, basically, right? First, concentrate. You need to have a match between those economies and the width and depth of your MSMEs. You need to have a very clear linear system of absorbing your own micro, medium, small sectors when they come up with inventions immediately into this program. So, for example, 5 or 6 of the technologies that I'm talking about opened in a small scale. And remember, the greatest leaps of technology are actually happening at the small scale level. These could have been technologies we could have made part of the national program and said, look, we're joining the 6th generation fighter program. This is our contribution. We're bringing in a better product that's cheaper, that's as good as anything you can produce, and we're cutting down costs. No, we won't even do that because we don't want to identify. MKU, Mohan Kumar Udyog, the one good defense producer in this country, now we given them contracts. But before, it was they built their entire business based on German export contracts. They were good enough for Germany, but they weren't good enough for the Indian army. ये कभी सुना है आपने?
No, I can believe that.
By the way, these decisions were also taken by the same engineers and scientists.
Yeah.
Huh?
We don't believe in Western constructs. So what is good for...
Understand, an engineer or a scientist, okay, you people are at best middle management level. You clowns should never reach the top management level. तुम्हारी औकात नहीं है.
Okay, so we have the second question by Karthik. You keep talking about India failing at indigenization of technology. What does it mean? And very important, what does indigenization mean? Because in today's world, can we actually indigenize all the country technology? And why has India failed at it?
Right. So excellent question, Karthik. Now here's the thing. You know, there are only 2 countries that completely indigenize technology. One is China and the other is Russia. And Russia is because, Russia still stuck in late 80s technology. They've moved maybe a bit ahead, as in terms of metallurgy and materials. Their computers are very good, as in their computer scientists are very good, but the hardware that they work with or they can produce is not good. So, materials have to keep step with software as well. Hardware has to keep step with software, and that is not happening in Russia. And of course, Russia has no other go other than producing its own Russian goods. The one time Russia did try to buy foreign equipment like the French amphibious aircraft carriers, the French had to embargo it because of the Ukraine. Was it Ukraine or Georgia? I forget, because one of those things, it had to get embargoed, and ultimately those aircraft carriers were sold to Egypt. So Russia is one. But understand, Russian technology is so backward, it's stuck in material technology. Okay, it is stuck in the 80s, and that is why the Indian Air Force had to reject the Sukhoi 57, called the PAC-FA, or their so-called 5th generation fighter. Usko to kisi angle se 5th generation fighter nahi dikhta hai. I mean, if that is a 5th generation fighter, then it's a bit like calling a hippopotamus a ballet dancer. Then you have China, and China has done it quite strategically, but it's met the absolute limits of its economy. Okay? They can't go past the middle income trap that they're stuck in. So their products are overwhelmingly meant for middle income this thing. Okay, you look even now at their phones and things like that. Everybody say, "Dekho bhai, ye Chinese phone kitna ye hai, wo hai," and all of that. It's still not at the same level as Apple. The individual components may be, if you buy things looking at 26 megapixel as opposed to quality, if a 7 megapixel can give you better quality than a 26 megapixel, what's the point?
The Google Pixel phone gives better picture than the Chinese phone.
Exactly. So what do you do? And it's a question of how you integrate things, how you're making everything work, and so on and so forth. This is number two. Even America. Okay, and the American economy is bigger than the Chinese economy, per capita much richer than either the Chinese or the Russian economy. Even they do not indigenize. So first of all, question what is the point of this indigenization that you're talking about? Second, for me, what does indigenization mean? It is a path to human capital investment. कि भाई उधर से technology lao, teach our people how to do it, so the caliber of your industrial workforce goes up. Then you go into work share agreements, in which case your R&D also goes up. You start meeting international project management timelines, and it improves the economy. So for me, when I talk about indigenization, what I'm actually talking about is human capital development in this country. But this is where you hit that educational barrier. To even reach that MSME stage, boss, I mean, China and Russia spend about $3,000 to $4,000 per capita on education, primary education. Okay, they spend between $12,000 to $15,000 on a trade or bachelor's education. In India, if you do the same thing, just to get them up to that level, West ki to baat hi chodo, you're looking at a per capita, that total of the investment has to be something like $550 billion in India per year. Kahan hai paisa? Just look at it from a purely economic ways and means. Unless you want to create a Chinese-style economy where only one patch develops, and that won't be a geographic economy like the Chinese, it will be an apartheid economy like South Africa, where you designate only Brahmins, new age Brahmins, engineers will develop this thing. Everybody else we're not going to invest in your education. Tum garib bhikari raho. You can't do that in a democracy.
Just like the apartment societies which have all the amenities, and the moment you move out of the apartment in the metropolitan centers, you reach the slum areas, right? So
exactly,
this is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have Krishnan. He's talking something about the Tejas, basically asking what exactly
success
the role
of the
Tejas
Tejas is tied to the Astra missile. We are not going to send the Tejas to dogfight PAF inside Pak airspace. Tejas will patrol the border and lob Astra at PAF and turn around. Boss, if you have a platform that is so inflexible that it can't cross the border, then you tell me what is the point of that platform. I agree. Your tactics should be tied to the limitations of your platform. But then why do you even need an Astra to do it? You could have taken the intermediate, the IJT, the intermediate jet aircraft, uska ek single seat variant lagao, usme nose cone lagao, and and then invest instead in the Astra. So it could have carried 15-20 Astras because it's got nice long slender wings, and you could have just kept lobbing missiles in that capacity at Pakistani this thing. तो फिर फालतू में पैसा काय का waste कर रहे हो? If its only job was to sit in the Indian border and fire missiles, why did you even need to make it supersonic? It has all these high performance functions. Why? So that it can dogfight, so that it can go in there, avoid missiles and things like that.
So basically, what is the role of Tejas then?
Tejas has to go into Pakistan. It has to fight. Personally, I think this is going to be, people are going to like this answer, but it is to be cannon fodder for the F-16 while our other planes kill off the F-16. In the process, I think we should use it much the same way as the T-34 was used by the Russians against the German Panzers. The German Panzers were far, far superior tanks. So what the Russians used to do was they used to allocate about 5 to 6 T-34s to go up against a Tiger. In the process, 3-4 of them would get blown up, but 2 would then flank the Tiger so that it was too close for the Tiger to really maneuver and things like that. and they would keep hitting the tiger and destroy it. Okay. The inability to do that is what led to the Argentines losing the Falklands War. Because what they did was, because the Argentine Mirage was suited to high altitude combat, and the British Harrier was suited to middle altitude combat, the Argentines basically were told, don't go and engage. But that's a very inflexible thing. This one could not go and engage. That one could, but it had lower performance. So what these guys did was, what the Argentines did was, they came down, they got shot in the initial encounter by the Brits. Now, after that, what you should be doing is, you should be saying like the Russians, fine, I'm going to throw everything I have at you. I don't care if I lose 3 Mirages for every Harrier, but I will shoot your Harriers down. Okay, this is your classic quality versus quantity thing. If your plane is better, use quality tactics. If their plane is better, use quantity tactics. And this is what Stalin used to say, quantity has a quality all of its own. That is the golden dictum of Stalin. And he won the war, boss, so he clearly knew what he was talking about, better than all these idiot Ghonchu engineers.
So Manish is asking,
वैसे मेरे को पूछना है भाई कि इंजीनियरों ने जंग लड़ा है क्या? तो वो क्यों प्लेन मैन्युफैक्चर कर रहे हैं? इंजीनियरों ने कोई कंपनी मैनेज किया है क्या? तो वो क्यों ये सब चला रहे हैं?
Oh, this is a counter question, that how can Abhijit speak on defense issues? Only engineers can speak on defense issues. So Munish is asking, what if LCA is handed over to the private sector in the future?
Yes,
Will we see
yes, that's actually what you need to be doing. Because if you hand it over to the private sector, boss, तुम्हारे अंबानी ने, he's produced a 5G network. He's willing to go ahead with it now, and he's willing to set it up. And you're still running a bloody futile conversation trying to get the Chinese, Huawei, and all of that involved, despite all the revelations of what they tried to do to the Dutch with the 3G and 4G networks. Right? You need to give it to the private sector, not just the individual components after you have developed them. You need to give the entire project over to the private sector. I think the problem is, the private sector is going to say, boss, we don't have the project management skills to run this entire thing. But look, if somebody agrees to do it, give it to them. Because they will be held up to a much higher standard than all these clowns will.
Basically, we need to have our own Lockheed Martin and Boeing.
Yeah.
So Mr. AKA is asking something. SK moved from T50 greater than KFX. Why does India require
South? Let me read that question out. South Korea moved from the T50 to the KFX fighter. Why does India require Mark II?
Tejas Mark II, I guess.
Look, basically, that's like, see, T50, boss, was an advanced trainer. KFX is a fighter. Right? The T50 can be a sort of lower end fighter, but it can't be a high endish fighter. ठीक है ना? Within KFX, it's like asking कि भाई, why did the F-16 require, Block 40, then Block 50, and then Block 60 upgrades? That is why the Tejas requires Mark I, Mark II. And understand, please, South Korea produced the T-50 because it has managed to indigenize technology brilliantly. It first got American tank technology and created their first tank, and today it is in the second tank, which has started exporting, created its own cannon to bypass export controls on the German cannon. Okay, they have a demonstrable record of indigenization and improvement. You do not. Please do not consider yourself in the same level as South Korea. South Korea is able to produce a lot of things. Where is your LG and Samsung, boss? Where? Where is your Hyundai? Where is your Kia? South Korea can produce a lot of things you can't. You are not South Korea. एक भिखारी को अपनी औकात में रहनी चाहिए. भिखारी अंबानी नहीं है, अंबानी भिखारी नहीं है.
That's too harsh a word for Vishwaguru Bharat, Abhijit.
Did I say I was applying it to Bharat?
It's understandable. So now Krishna is asking not just to find the Tejas, but this is how the IF is going to use it.
And this
Basically,
is exactly right. So I get your question, Krishna. This is why I'm saying if you're going to build the Tejas, focus now on the missile, on getting new generations of the missile in. There are now two different kinds of technology you need to focus in: air breathing ramjet like the Meteor, or dual pulse like the Stunner, like the Israeli Stunner missile. Get into that because that gives you excellent terminal maneuverability in the end phase to actually kill the plane. Because what happens with current missiles is by the time they've reached the target, their weight is so great and their fuel is so spent that they can't really maneuver at the end to hit the plane. So you need to focus on these two technologies to make the Astra better. Number one. Number two, you need to now build the Tejas in large numbers because you have to accept attrition for these models. You have to accept that some of them are going to get shot down. So throw them into battle. Do it.
basically use
But
the
don't
Chinese
say you're not going to send them over the border. Because we're not sending them over the border, it's a trainer aircraft. And it's too expensive for a trainer.
Black Mountain side is asking, we have such a high level of protein deficiency in the country. So what is the starting point to solve it?
See, thank you for asking that question. We're having sterile debates on protein. We don't have a protein deficiency debate in this country. We have an egg in midday meal scheme debate in this country. And I don't give a shit for eggs. You can get your protein in 100 different other ways. North Korea realized it couldn't afford eggs, number one. Number two, they were too fragile and too perishable. And so what they did was they went in for soy milk. Now with your midday meal scheme, and in fact, what you could have done instead of, setting up Amma Kitchen, though Amma Kitchen is a fantastic idea in its own, this thing, what you should have done is in every district, you should have had a midday meal preparation center where, using that DRDO packet technology that MTR uses, where you just take a packet, put it in boiling water and take it out, and it's a fresh, hot meal ready to go. Delicious, fresh, hot MTR meal ready to go. You should have employed widows, orphans in every single district. It would have put value addition to them instead of, the principle of the school pilfering away 70%, only giving 30% to the lady, and then pilfering away 90% of the actual food and raw material acquisition budget. It would have made for much better accounting. It would have been a human value addition chain for people getting employed. For the utensils and things like that, it would have created, industrial style equipment that would have created economies of scale. You could have created a whole local economy out of it to supply schools. And protein, there are so many solutions, boss. You can have, soy milk, soy meal maker, what have you. You can cook the food in soy milk if you want. You can provide soy milk Tetra packs if you want. Don't get fixated on the methodology of delivery. This is what India does. We want protein, but it has to be in the egg. We want to become Bill Gates, but I will only become Bill Gates if you teach me physics in Sanskrit. We fetishize language, we fetishize the egg. You want to get to the end state, or you want to focus on the egg or the language? So make that decision very clearly. Okay, so there were a lot of things you could do to overcome the protein deficiency problem. Okay, you can still produce protein supplement pills. Yeast extract is a very rich source of protein supplement. Okay, so like your polio shots and things like that, you go telling people buy protein shots low, protein shots low. Give it out free if you must. But do it. We don't think of solutions in this country. There are 100 different solutions, but India is a country where you invent 10,000 problems for every given solution.
Akshay is asking, can we decrease the cost of education using the internet? Can
Yes, you
start
can. Not just decrease the cost of education, you can also improve the quality of education. Okay, and I'll
agreed.
tell you how. And this in itself acts as a driver of rural electrification. When the UPA was around, they were focusing on that cheap tab. This government doesn't talk about it, and in UPA 2, they stopped talking about that tab also towards the end of UPA 2. Uska kya hua pata nahi. But you basically imagine you spend 3,000 rupees per kid on getting you a decent tab. Villages are now electrified. Okay, every kid has a tab, and what you do is first you need to simplify the educational content. ठीक है, Hindi needs to be taught in spoken Hindi, not in Shuddh Hindi. Shuddh Hindi सीखे, teaching somebody Shuddh Hindi. Shuddh Hindi is not the same as the Hindi you're learning at home. Ghar mein, I bet you even somebody as fluent in Hindi as Abhinav Prakash does not, I've heard him talk to his father and his brother. He doesn't say, Bhratashri, main upasthit hu. Or he doesn't, and his brother doesn't say, Anuj, वार्तालाप कीजिए. नहीं, भाई क्या कर रहा है तू?
अनुज छोटा भाई होता है, मेरा छोटा भाई मेरे को अनुज क्यों बोल रहा है?
Same thing. You get the drift. He doesn't refer to the Chota Bhai as Anuj, and the Anuj doesn't refer to him as Bhratashri and shit like that.
Jeshth bhai.
So you unnecessary. First of all, and I can tell you, being Tamil myself, that Tamil, the Brahminical and the slum Tamil that I speak, the difference between that and Chase Tamil is so huge. It's like two completely different languages. You can't. So first, simplify your language. But that is caught up in this thing. वो भी ठीक है. But what you do is you produce quality content that's easy to understand, and first rationalize the content and see ki bhai, is this something that they are actually going to use? You tell me, for all the literature classes we had in school, we had वो क्या खूब लड़ी मर्दानी वो तो झांसी वाली रानी थी, and then ये देखो ये इंद्रधनुष निकला, and all these poems. What is the practical skill you're gaining reading poems and literature? You want to focus on language skills, boss. और वो भी ब्रज भाषा में दोहा एकादश and all of that. What do you teach? See, it's one thing teaching me, who has a big disposable income. I can afford to learn दोहा एकादश. Okay, करत करत अभ्यास के जड़मती होत सुजान. But for a person coming from a low income background, who wants to get a stable job, who can't afford luxuries like literature, why are you shoving shit like Braj Bhasha and Khari Boli and nonsense like that down people's throats, boss? Why are you shoving Doha Ekadash down their throats? He isn't going to go to an interview and get the job because he says, kal kare so aaj kare so ab pal mein parle hoegi, bahuri karega kab. So reduce the syllabus. Then
Good.
Your tabs, if you make it, because right now 90% of your teachers are third-rate teachers. Psychologically think about your syllabus and look at a way where it's engaging, it's interactive. And if in exams, if they are not responding to one subject, but they're responding to another subject. Have the classification changes where he or she is allowed to go to the 10th, 12th standard in the subject that he or she likes and find a job in that, instead of being stuck to if you did well in bloody Braj Bhasha, karat karat abhyas ke.
Pranav is asking the recent tests of Astra Mark III. Any news on
I'm
that?
sure it's a decent missile, boss. At any rate, I think the Astra will be as good, if not somewhat better, than your Chinese missiles. Because let's face it, if we do things well, our stuff is better than Chinese stuff sometimes. So I have no doubt our things are better than Chinese stuff at the moment. So, ठीक है, चलेगा अभी के लिए. My worry is the Pakistani F-16s and what kind of technology from the F-16s the Chinese end up absorbing.
What is this?
Why is India obsessed with offset clause instead of Workshare? Some production built in our country with Western countries. India will never do that. Do you know why? Because this is one of those things where Workshare is great when you have a competitive sector where your private sector is getting the contracts. Here you forcibly have to give contracts to the public sector, which is uncompetitive and not very good. So we will always insist on offset because you will spend extra money buying the product just to keep your useless PSUs operational so that they get the pretense of foreign contracts. In addition to all the useless subsidies you give those PSUs. This is the cost of socialism. That is why we will not do Workshare and we will keep doing offset.
I follow Sushant Sareen plus you closely, and I find you highly intelligent. You highlight the education. Anyways, the first word is also true. Highlight education and human capital relating to everything. Please write a book, sir, on education. Basically, become Arundhati Roy and write on everything, Abhijit.
यार तू क्यों मेरे को माँ बहन की गाली दे रहा है यार? मैंने तेरे को क्या बोला है? मैंने तेरे को कभी ऐसा गाली दिया है क्या? तू कुछ भी बोल सकता था. उस औरत का नाम तूने क्यों लिया?
She's the best
I
commentator.
won't come on your program again if you ever compare me to Arundhati Roy again. No?
Okay, I take back my words. I compare you to
Apologize. Publicly apologize.
Apologized. So Sudhanshu Sharma is asking.
इलॉन भाई, बिल्लू भाई, बीजोस चाचा, जकरबर्ग भाई. भाई अगर जकरबर्ग और बिल्लू और बीजोस तेरे इतने रिश्तेदार हैं, आई डोंट वांट टू टेक योर क्वेश्चन. आई डोंट एसोसिएट विद वोको हराम क्रीप्स. इसरो चीफ, इट्स कंपनी फाउंडर, सब इंजीनियरिंग हैं गंजे. हाँ, तो इसरो तो जकरबर्ग और बेजोस कितने चूतिए हैं वो तो तेरे को भी पता है. बिल गेट्स कितना चूतिया है, कितना मर्डर किया उसने अपना ये करके, वो तो तेरे को पता है. तो यही तेरे रिश्तेदार, ये तेरे इंजीनियर यही करते हैं, खून खराबा करते हैं ना. बहुत मजा. यही तेरा ब्रूड है. एंजॉय योरसेल्फ.
Chetan is
What is
asking
what is the optimum fleet strength of the Indian Air Force and Navy? That depends on your equipment. If you have excellent equipment and you know how to use them, your tactics, you can bring the numbers down. If you don't, you can't. That's it. You know, Russia had a much bigger air force than Germany at the outset of the war, but Germany just plowed through the Russian air force. No? France had an equivalent technology level and a bigger military than Germany, and Germany plowed through them. So it's not fleet strength. It depends on your leadership abilities, your tactics, and the quality of your equipment. It's a matrix.
Okay, so Abhijit has to go for some work. So we are taking last one or two questions. So I have one by Chaitanya again. Sir, you always say that we need to rationalize our equipment. Can you elaborate with examples like what tanks and aircraft we need, or do you have any papers on it?
So very simple. तुमको अगर अर्जुन पे करना है I'm perfectly okay with that. But then just have Arjun and come up with a plan ki Arjun will not operate side by side with XYZ. Arjun will be the only combat tank that we use. We are retiring the T-90s right now. Every new squadron of Arjuns added, one squadron of T-90s will be retired. Okay, that. If you're doing aircraft, then say that for every LCA squadron coming in, we will be retiring one MiG-29 Jaguar MiG-21 squadron. Okay, we'll only keep the heavies. Only Rafale and Sukhoi will remain. Everything else will have to go. That is called rationalization. It is logistically better. Logistics, not just for the mechanics of the aircraft, but also your entire weapons suites and things like that. So you have to do that. Should India drop family planning as birth rates are now at 2.3? Bhai, family planning karta kaun hai idhar? I haven't seen the family planning Hathi and the Hum Do Hamare Do symbol in a way. I don't know. Abhinav, have you seen it? I haven't seen it in the last 15, 20 years. Have you?
No.
I haven't even seen one of those horrible Doordarshan ads. Hum Do Hamare Do this thing.
Do fool hote the. Right. So yeah, but India should stop focusing on population control now. Your population is anyways falling as of now. You are already 2.2, 2.1. If you
It's
do
not
population
falling,
control
it's
now,
slowing.
it is actually falling in the southern states. At the national level, it's slowing. Because of the northern states, we still have the high TFR, but at the lower southern states, we have the lower TFR. So it's almost falling as of now. You can see that in the next 10 to 15 years. But yeah, I think we should abandon all those goals.
In army, officers leading the charge and sacrificing their lives in Kargil, good strategy. Exactly, Rajat. Thank you. No, it is terrible strategy. It shows you that we haven't moved past World War I. This should not be happening. Nobody, forget the officers leading the charge. Even your Jawans should not be charging like this, boss. You need to have non-line of sight precision mortars and things like that to take out pinpoint things, or drones to take out pinpoint things before they go in. For me, the army's priority should be no infantryman should be sent into an area that has not already previously been sanitized by air. And this is where, the Air Force Army rivalry takes over, where we have two bloody helicopter fleets and crap like that. I have always said this: transfer all rotary wing to the army. No helicopters for the Air Force.
Okay, Abhijit, last question and answer him briefly so that you have to leave. I know that.
What is the situation? नहीं. ये क्या है? ये LCA पे नहीं है. LCA मेरे को इस पे पूछो. ये क्या है question? ये रशिया यूक्रेन क्या है?
So the person was spamming for too long. I thought I should oblige this spammer. Let's be more democratic. So okay,
okay, fine. So Russia Ukraine is very simple. It's basically Ukraine has cut off water flow to this thing, and Russia is at its end game. It wants to screw Biden over as well, show the limits of Biden's impotence. The more shrill Biden gets, the more likely it is that Russia is going to go invade Ukraine. So, Ukraine, unfortunately, is the victim in all of this. Of course, Ukraine is also going down a very foolish path that they think this doddering geriatric old dingbat is somehow going to come protect them. He is not. Because I can honestly tell you, when Russian tanks move into Ukraine, Biden will do a lot of condemnation. He will do a lot of sanctions. He will do damn all other than that. He is not going to risk nuclear war over Ukraine. Okay? So basically, superpowers are doing what superpowers always do. They use the weak as condoms.
Okay, so thank you, Abhijit, for your time. And the last comment is an excellent one that should end our show. IQ Mara 50 se aur by the 6th generation fighter jet ki. But thank you. So finally, I was able to drag Abhijit to this live on LCA and Tejas. I was expecting more questions where you can grill him on LCA, but okay, whatever the audience wants to ask. Abhijit, thank you for your time.
Alhamdul Ganesha, Vel Vel Vetrivel.